If you are anything like me, fall and winter can be a really depressing time of year because the garden starts dying back, nature starts going dormant, and that can be kind of depressing. So, I have a pretty sizable Plectranthus collection. These are houseplants. They're from near dry areas in the equator. They're really easy to take care of. They have wonderful flowers, and they flower in that kind of end of summer, fall into winter time of year. And that makes them great if you're trying to kind of stave off the seasonal depression. I have 7 or 8 species here. It's hard to determine, but one of them may be a variety. It's unclear. It's a patented plant. We'll get into that later. That's one that I really kind of started off with and didn't know much about. The one species that I have that's actually two varieties is another complicated one. They look nothing alike, but they're both equally beautiful and actually useful to the home grower. First, I kind of want to talk about some of the habits of Plectranthus. Let's talk about what the Plectranthus genus really is. It's a genus of plants in Lamiaceae, my favorite. They're mostly known for a kind of prostrate growth habit, which is where these plants they have these tendrils like this, and they usually trail along the ground, creating clonal colonies. But as I'll show you, there's some upright species that don't really do that, so if you're more into that, that can be a good option. But the reason that these can be really cool is because of these trailing habits. They don't necessarily need to be touching soil. They can have these really nice drooping forms that kind of create like a chandelier look to them, or kind of an octopus-like look to them, which is something that I kind of seek out with houseplants specifically. Which is going to bring us into our first plant. This is a useful one, so you can actually use this for certain things. It's actually a medicinal plant, though it's kind of hard to determine how medicinal it actually is, but it is interesting nonetheless. But let's take a close look at our first plant here. This is going to be a really nice, easy, basic one, and it's one of our useful ones. And that first plant is going to be Plectranthus emboinicus vix plant. This is a really cool one. This has more of a kind of upright posture to it, but you can see it kind of still has these tendrils. And you can determine how it actually ends up looking based on how you prune it. These are really easy to prune. They're really easy to propagate, so I have a lot of these. And interestingly, they have sort of a bark-like texture to the oldest growth point, so it kind of looks like a little miniature tree, kind of like a bonsai, which there's a really cool one later in this video. It's called Bonsai Mint, very similar to this, but some very distinctive features. But speaking of distinctive features, this is a very prolific plant, so every single node produces little stems, and they are all propagatable material. But people use this not only as a culinary herb, not specifically this variety, but they use it as a medicinal plant. So these leaves typically will be boiled in water, and you'll inhale those vapors, and it kind of works like Vicks Vapo Rub. Clears out your sinuses, clears out your throat, but you can actually just chew on these leaves and they will decongest you a little bit. So they taste kind of bitter. They're very watery. Like, you can even feel that the cells are being crushed as you're chewing them. This is kind of a very succulent plant, and most of them are, but not necessarily. Bitter, kind of like lime, green. It tastes medicinal, but as you chew that, you can kind of feel that it breaks down and you phlegm in your throat, or maybe your sinuses clear out a little bit. So this is a good one to have on hand for cold season, and that's why it's the first plant I'm showing you. And it just kind of looks pretty neat. These look a little shabby because these are my personal plants that I use for propagation, and you may have seen them in another video where I just kind of cut off the tips of them and either use those for propagation or just to kind of shape them up, make them look really nice. And this is, depending on how you prune it, it kind of has this octopus-like look to them. I have not gotten these to bloom yet, been growing these for 3 years. I'm not sure what it is that I specifically need to do. I think it goes based off of the amount of light that the plants are getting rather than actual temperature, but it's kind of hard to figure that out. I would say these are a great beginner plant. The second one I want to show you is Plectranthus emboinicus again. This is another cultivar of the first one I showed you. This is variegata, so it has these awesome variegated leaves. And it does have an actually pretty distinctive growth habit compared to the other one. This is actually used more as a culinary herb, so in place of oregano, typically. It is called Cuban oregano. You'll find it under that name, or Plectranthus emboinicus. But typically it will be under variegated Cuban oregano. And it's an awesome little plant, super easy to propagate just like the first one, though a little more difficult at times because it is variegated. This is just a fresh clone, so this doesn't look as interesting, but I want to show you up here. These are some mature ones. And these look amazing. These leaves are about as big as about half the size of my hand. Now these have a much more bush-like habit to them. You can see it does kind of shoot these stems off, but it is a very bush-like plant. Especially when you prune it, it can kind of form like a mat or a bush-like structure. But the leaves are huge and they look awesome because they're variegated. You can get these spots that go into the centers of the leaves. Even like, I'll just pull this one off of here. Even like this. Like that just looks so neat to me. It looks like a painting. And that's why this is probably one of my favorite ones. Plectranthus emboinicus variegata. And as for the flavor of this, if you're looking for something that you can use for cooking, it's pretty similar to the Vicks plant, but definitely has those very strong oregano notes to it. A little bit harsh, and being grown indoors, it would probably be a lot less harsh. You need to get a lot more sun on this than you do a lot of the other species. But if you think about it, half of this leaf, you could probably cut that into quarters, add that to some pasta sauce when you're making your dinner for your family or yourself, and that'll be pretty good. And sometimes when these leaves get this big, they have this cool marbling texture, and that's pretty typical of Plectranthus, to have this marbled look to them, or very light colored undersides. This is a very, very hairy plant, and so is Vicks plant. But yeah, this is probably my favorite in terms of looks. In terms of actual culinary value, I wouldn't say it's all that valuable to me specifically, but like I said, you cut this up, you can freeze it, dry it, whatever. It's pretty much just like oregano, but a little bit stronger, and you have a lot more of it. This is what my specimen pot looks like for this. You can see that bushy kind of mat-like structure. That's because I cut this plant up to make my clones for selling or just to have more plants. And if you can see here, it has these pink edges to it. That is from being left in the sun and kind of drying out a lot. And if you're going to be having this plant in the house, it might very well develop a lot more of that pink if you're kind of holding off on watering a lot longer. And the water requirements for Plectranthus emboinicus specifically is pretty limited. It is very hairy, it's very succulent, so you don't really have to water it a whole lot. You really only have to water if you're looking to get a lot more growth off of it, and even then wait until the pot completely dries out. Now I know you're staring at this one thinking, man, isn't that the same thing? And this is not the same thing. This is not the same thing at all, even though it looks pretty similar. Looks like it has smaller leaves. But this is Plectranthus coleoides. Now I didn't propagate a lot of this year, so I really only have one plant that I've had up for sale. That is what you would typically find when you're trying to buy one, compared to this mature specimen like this. I'll show you this specimen pot. Now this is really an amazing plant. I was really struggling to actually get this one to grow, but I'm even seeing flowers on here now, so I'm super excited to see those. Would really like to get this into a hanging pot because these stems are just amazing to look at. This is actually two plants You can see it has this really nice mounding structure, these really nice tendrils, and it has that woody base again, like the Plectranthus have. This is Plectranthus coleoides, so used to be in the genus of Coleus. That's why it's called Plectranthus coleoides. It looks like a coleus. And those two groups are related. They're very closely related, so a lot of things get moved in and out of it. It's complicated and not worth going into in this video. But this is actually harder to grow plant. It likes quite a bit more light, quite a bit more sun, so it really didn't take off until this summer, and it did really well in the kind of more shaded, like 2 hours of direct sunlight, and that was it. Appreciates a lot more water, can't really be propagated as easily, but I kind of figured out how to do that this year. You just kind of take one of these full nodes like this. It's hard to explain. But you just kind of take where there's a large cluster of leaves, stick that right on top of the soil. Don't stick it in the soil, don't stick it in water. Put it right on top of the soil and it roots in really well. That's actually how I have the one that's here on my cell table, which I'll show you that one. So this is typically how you'll see them to buy, usually not as thick as this, not as robust as this, but it'll be these straight stems, just in a pot or bare root. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Looks very much like an upright plant, but it really isn't. It has a pretty awesome sage-like smell to it. It looks exactly the same as this if you didn't know what you were doing. You will find this for sale under the name variegated Swedish ivy, which that's actually going to be our next plant, which is this one here. Now this actually has a variegated version, or a variegated cultivar. I believe it's called Old Timer or something like that. It has a kind of funny name, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't have it. But it basically looks like this, but way more succulent. This is a hairy one. This one is not a hairy one, and neither is its cultivar. Apparently I actually made 2 of these pots. I didn't know that. So as I said, Swedish ivy, this is another mounding, bushy one with trailing stems. Now these trailing stems, it can be up to the opinion of if these actually look like they would be cool vines or not. They actually have one of these in the White House. This is Plectranthus australis, so it was a gift from the Australian Prime Minister, if I remember correctly, and quite a few of the places that will sell these actually are descended from cuttings from that plant, though I question the validity of that. But again, this is just kind of a mounding plant. You'll find it under the name Swedish ivy. This is actually the specimen pot, so not super big leaves or anything because this is one I cut up. Even the ones I'm selling are actually quite bushy, but they have much bigger leaves. But yeah, you'll typically find these as single stems cuttings, bare root. They're actually quite expensive, like $20 for 3 of them or something. But they're super easy to propagate. You can do it in water super easily, or you can do it directly into soil. That's how I make a lot of mine. And that's actually super easy to do. They're sit it and forget it. Just make sure they stay watered good. This has purple stems, which this purple is going to kind of be the theme of the next plant, Plectranthus purpuratus. But you'll notice that it does not have purple undersides to its leaves, which is actually the distinction from the next plant. So 2 very similar plants back to back again, but actually 2 different species. So the next one is Plectranthus purpuratus. Exactly the same as Plectranthus australis, Swedish ivy in every way. You'll find this one under the name purple Plectranthus. The pictures of it are actually very misleading. The top of the leaves are not purple, it's these underside of the leaves that are like a deep burgundy color is why this plant is called purple Swedish ivy. Probably another one of my favorites, super hardy as compared to Plectranthus australis. Equally as easy to propagate, somewhat woody stems, whereas australis doesn't really have those. But this is it, the much hardier version, and I would highly recommend getting this one. Both plants do pretty well on neglect. Water once the pots dry out, and you can kind of see the difference between the two here. The only thing that's different really is obviously the color of them, but the leaves don't get as big on the purple Plectranthus. Which brings us on to our confusing one that I can't technically identify. Guacamole Plectranthus. So all I know about this is that it is a hybrid, it is patented, and it's variegated. So you can't propagate this one. I don't think I can even legally sell one, even if I grew it out. But obviously it has these yellow variegations. Usually you get some kind of lime colors in there, actually, like this one, which I think is where that guacamole comes from. Purple stems on these, purple undersides to the leaves with yellow fringes typically. And you can even get it sometimes that there will be purple on the top of the leaf, though I don't think I have any of those. This is a little pot of it. I have a bigger, much older pot. They sell this as it's Fancifiller's guacamole Plectranthus. They sell it as a hanging basket filler or a planter filler, but it is actually a great houseplant. I've grown it for the longest time. I think it's been 3 or maybe even 4 years at this point. Now this is another one that you can kind of bonsai. It gets woody stems. This one I actually had so that it was kind of like a just wall or a ramp of leaves, and it kind of cascaded over the back of it. But I cut it back all the way back this year because it just started not looking so good after the winter, and it's bouncing back pretty well. I gave it some good fertilizer. Kind of getting away from this one. It can get really massive leaves like a lot of the Plectranthus australis, but usually mine stay pretty small. Usually I think that's like a sign of the fertilization or something. Kind of a weird smell to this one, so I wouldn't recommend this one if you're looking for something that smells good. It doesn't smell that great, to be honest with you. So now we're going to get into the new ones. I don't have anything other than the personal collection on these. This is String of Pillows, Plectranthus prostratus. This is a great hanging plant. Kind of neat, very new to it, so I don't have a whole lot to say about it. Has these leaves that kind of curl up, they get really thick, which is where that name String of Pillows comes from. That's the name you'll find this under. Good houseplant. Not sure how it would typically do in just like a room at this point, because I've been having this in the greenhouse establishing, and I'm going to try and clone it out a bunch. But this is another fragrant one, another herb one. Just kind of a slight sage hint to it, but mostly just kind of smells like grass. But maybe that's what you want in the fall or winter time. So we'll blaze right on past this to the next newest one. That's this blue one up here, Plectranthus argentatus. I actually don't know the common name for this one. I really like this one because it's blue. It looks like an octopus. It's got the somewhat bark stems, but they're mostly just succulent, slightly hairy. Really cool looking coleus-like flowers. They are blue. They flower kind of sporadically, which is really neat. And I really like how it looks like an octopus, and you spin it around like this, and it, yeah. So this is a really cool one. Just got it last week, I believe. And it has these really awesome, gigantic leaves to it. So because it's a very hairy, succulent plant, I'm assuming it likes a lot of sun. It doesn't like to be waterlogged, but let it dry out. Water it when it is completely dry. But yeah, that's just a really cool one. So bonsai mint, Plectranthus ernstii. which is a very silly name to me for some reason. Looks a lot like the other Plectranthus, kind of actually boring to look at until you get up real close to it. And this isn't pruned or anything, so it might look a little silly to you. Bring it up close to the camera and you'll see why it's called bonsai mint, and actually why I really like this plant. It has these bulbous, succulent, like barky stems to it, and they kind of separate into these nodes like this, and it's just really weird to look at, and really kind of does look like a bonsai, like a tree. Another fragrant herb. Again, kind of grassy, a little bit sagey, maybe even some oregano notes in there, a little woody even. But yeah, this is really a showpiece if you get it cleaned up really nice. I really wanted to see the flowers. Again, these are like really nice coleus flowers. They're kind of blue, but mostly white. They're really cool to look at. I have noticed that in my greenhouse where I've been letting it establish, I do notice some mold problems because the flowers don't separate from the plant and fall down. They stay on the plant, but it doesn't seem to have infected any other parts of the plant other than dead flowers, so I don't mind that. A really nice showpiece of a plant. A little bit harder to get established, a little bit harder to even keep looking nice. You'll have to keep up with it, but if you're really into plants, I think you could do it. Blooms in late summer into winter actually. So this will be a really cool one. Hopefully I'll get these up for sale next year. I think this will be a really good seller because it's just so unique. I don't think really anyone knows about it, at least in the Northeast here. And that actually brings me to the end of the video. That's the last plant I have to show you right now. Let me know which plant was your favorite down in the comments. I'd love to try and get a lot of the more popular ones growing and see if I can sell those. It's actually been pretty difficult to get some of these houseplants to sell because I don't think people know what they are. That's just so hyper specific to my interests. Even just let me know if you enjoyed the video. It really helps out a lot. The engagement drives the channel forward, and I can get more information out there that I find really interesting and I hope you find really interesting. So again, thank you for watching, and let me know if there's anything specific that you'd like to see or anything super specific that you'd like to know about any plants. I might even respond to it in the comments. I read all of them, I try and respond to all of them, but I get busy, so apologies if it takes me a little bit.